Yeah, it does.
Thanks for tuning in to this special edition of the Renshaw Report. Maury I reporting for the city too tough to die, New London. Our guest today is Mayor Mike Passero. Mike, thank you for taking the time to come out and on this in your busy schedule on this busy day.
All right. Thank you, Murray. Happy to be here.
And I had asked Mike to come on for the purpose of explaining the revaluation process because many of us are confused. And quite frankly, there's some of your constituents out there that are in shock because they got their new assessment. So, Mike, if you could explain how this thing works, because there's no need to panic at this particular point in time because the mill rate hasn't been set, but could you explain that in detail as to how it works and where it's going? And
Right. So the mill rate will be, is relative to the property assessment. So we have X amount of money we have to raise to cover the city's costs, and the mill rate to do that last year based on the previous property assessments was around 37 mils. So with the increase in property values that are showing up on this latest reval, which we do every 5 years.
by state law?
By state law, that's correct. So you can expect that the mill rate will be adjusted downward, assuming, say we can run the city net, which is not likely, but say we can run the city in FY25 for the same amount of money that we ran the city in FY24, the current fiscal year, then the mill rate would simply be adjusted down so that we raise the same amount of money. So your taxes theoretically could stay the same, even though the value of your property has, in some cases, dramatically increased. So I believe that the average increase for single-family homes, which is the sector that increased the most, went up close to 70%. And other property sectors went up significantly too, 50 to 60%. I believe that multifamilies went up somewhere around, somewhere between a little lower than the single-family homes. So, the good news is people who are property owners, their wealth has increased.
Their wealth has increased?
Oh, certainly.
How so?
Well, the value of most people's wealth, the generational wealth in families that they can pass on to the next generation, is their real property, is their real estate. And your real estate is now, I think everybody understood that their property values had increased. I mean, certainly anybody that sold in the last 3 or 4 years has realized that profit. Of course, until you sell, you don't realize the profit. But the value of your asset has increased considerably.
Potentially increased.
If you were to sell, correct. You have to liquidate any type of asset in order to see the money. So it's a matter of timing. So the goal of my administration now, as we work through the budget process, which starts after the first of the year, I will be presenting a budget on April 1st to the City Council for consideration. That budget will, our goal will be to, as we have in the last over 6 years now, stabilize the taxes. So our goal will be to maintain people's taxes essentially where they are. If our goal would be to walk them back, of course, but at least to try to keep some stability as we have in the property taxes that people are paying. The way we've been able to do that, obviously the cost of government has gone up, all of these years, but the way we've been able to keep people's taxes stable is by increasing the grand list with new development. And as you know, you could see all around you in New London, there's a lot of new development that's helping us to grow our grand list. And as the grand list grows, the city has more revenue in order to cover our increasing costs.
And that's a question that some people have, Mike. In view of the fact that New London is booming, we got all this stuff going on, many people think our taxes should go down because of this unprecedented workload and generation of businesses and buildings. What's your response to that?
It has been going down. We've been able to walk the mill rate down considerably since I first took over. I think it was somewhere in the 42 mil range when I took over. It's down close to 37.
But you've got money coming in all over with all these projects. Right
Well,
across the street from me, the 200 apartments there, the building down. I mean, things are booming.
Yeah, well, you have to keep in mind for a lot of those projects, we don't see the taxes initially because there's phase in on taxes on any of those large developments. We had decades ago, the city, and I think it was a good policy move. The city has established an enterprise zone. The downtown is in the enterprise zone of the City of New London, so any development in the enterprise zone, we actually don't see any tax benefit for the first 2 years.
So they do not pay taxes for 2 years?
They continue to pay the property tax that was on the property prior to the development. So the property tax is paid for what the property was assessed prior to the development, and the increased value after the development is phased in. A third year you pay 20%, fourth year you pay 40%, third year is 20%, then 30%, then 40%. At any rate, by the seventh year it phases in so that by the seventh year you're paying 100% of the taxes that are due, which we tax on 70% of the assessed value of the asset.
So let's get back to the assessment. Vision Appraisal conducted this mathematical exercise.
Correct.
Can you tell the people a little bit about the appeals process? Some people think they'd like to appeal it, which is their right. Can you explain how they would go about doing so?
So there's two phases. There's an informal appeal process, which is taking place now. You can make an appointment and discuss your appraisal with the people who did it at Vision Appraisal. They are trying to do these things on the phone.
And they have the authority to renegotiate the amount?
They're the ones that have determined the assessment, and they will listen to any argument that a property owner has as to why the Vision Appraisal might have made a mistake. That's the first stage. So Vision Appraisal will hear out the property owner and listen to their arguments and make a decision whether they're going to adjust their appraisal that they've given to the assessor. That's the first stage. The second stage is a formal appeals process to the Board of Assessment Appeals. The Board of Assessment Appeals is 3 residents of New London appointed by the mayor. They will be impaneled in the next, after the beginning of the new year. I'll appoint this year's Board of Assessment Appeals.
Who are you thinking about appointing?
I'd rather not speculate on that at this point, but generally the members that did it the 5 years ago, actually they sit not only in reval years, they also hear property appeals.
Mike, I gotta ask you this. I mean, that's an important job they have. How would one be qualified to do something like that? Because they're not gonna make their decision based on popularity or politics. They're pretty.
No, the whole reason for the reval process is to be fair. The property tax burden should be distributed equitably across all property owners in the city. It has to be fair. And so and residents are in a position, generally I've appointed people who have background in real estate and real estate assessments. There's generally at least one person on that board, if not more, that have a background in the real estate industry. But the goal is to be fair, to make sure that everybody's property is evaluated the same. So it's a level playing field, and nobody's overpaying. So everybody carries their own burden. But the Board of Assessment Appeals is the next stage of the process. Now, first of all, the assessor has to take all of this information and she has to publish the grand list. She has to make a final decision on everything and publish the grand list. And that after she publishes the grand list, that's when the formal process of appealing your assessment begins. And that's by making an appointment with the Board of Assessment
And
Appeals.
that hasn't happened yet. People will have plenty of time to make those appointments should they wish.
Right. They have 30 days after the grand list is published. So the grand list will be either be published February 1st or March 1st, depending on this is an enormous amount of data.
What is the grand list?
The grand list is the value of all taxable properties in the city.
And that's listed per property?
Yes, exactly. Yep. After the grand list is published every year, usually there's an article in the paper with the top 10 taxpayers. You know, and generally it's the same properties. Believe it or not, the utilities are usually the number 1 or number 2 top paying property taxpayers in the city. You know, the EB campus down on Pequot Avenue is usually in the top 10. Some of the large apartment complex owners are in the top 10. So it's the grand list is just the list of all the properties in the city that pay taxes, and then there's a bottom line with the value of that grand list. Our goal, as far as developing and promoting the city, is to grow that grand list, to have, you know, instead of, for instance, that empty lot on Bank Street, across from Pearl Street, that was empty for, 40 years? That produced no revenue for the city, and it was a blighted, ugly, what we call the missing tooth on Bank Street. So it now has a building on it that will begin to generate.
I like that building.
I do too, but it's a matter of taste,
Yeah.
okay? So anyway, that building will begin to generate property taxes for us 2 years down the road. And the full value of that property will be phased in over 7 years. So we're planning for the future. All of the new development you see is not an immediate boost to the grand list, but it's, well, actually to the tax revenue, it does immediately boost the value of the grand list up. But as far as all of the tax abatements have to be calculated in as far as the final tax revenue that we raise from the grand list.
Is there ever any discussion about the ongoing problem we've had over the years with non-taxable properties and the unfairness of the state's administration of that issue? I mean, we get the pilot funds, but they're never near enough to match what the property would.
Well, actually, yeah. Actually, the thing that people have to understand about pilot is only paid on hospitals, and colleges, and state properties. So a lot of the nonprofit churches and that sort of thing, the properties that are taken off the tax rolls, there's a statute, 12-81, Connecticut General Statutes 12-81, which lists all the types of properties that are not taxable. And there's over 100 of them last time I looked. Categories of properties. We don't get pilot for.
You get nothing for that.
For none of them. Just the hospitals, the colleges, and state properties. But you know, it's a very small percentage. For instance, on the state pier property, the assessed value of that property, the state essentially was paying us about 12% of the taxes that would have been done. It would have been paid on that property if it was privately owned, you know, and privately owned and like business like waterfront business like Cross Sound Ferry, for instance, pays its full share of taxes, but the state is running a port facility and essentially not paying any taxes to the city of New London for the services that the city has to provide for that property, which when a property is taken off the tax rolls, it doesn't relieve the city of the burden of providing municipal services to that property. We still have to do all the inspections. We have to, provide the emergency services. We have to maintain the roads for people to get to the hospital, for instance. So there's, it's always an ongoing public policy debate whether the value of that exception and whether the cities.
With regard to the state pier, and I think everybody would agree, history is being made down at the state pier with what's going on down there, whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it. History is being made. I mean, that's serious money down there. You negotiated a special deal with the governor.
Actually, with private. Well, there's three deals. So we started out with the state pier, as I said, we essentially recovered 12% of the value of the tax revenue that we should be receiving on that property. When Deepwater Wind was the first company to come in to the city and say, look, Deepwater Wind is the company that did the 5 windmills off of Block Island, essentially the first wind turbines in the United States. And they were the company that won the initial bid to do the project off of Martha's Vineyard, 64 turbines. We negotiated a community host agreement with Deepwater Wind. Deepwater Wind then sold that project to Ørsted. So Ørsted is pursuing that project and will be assembling those turbines at the state pier. So we have a community host agreement, which is between the city and Ørsted and Eversource, based on the agreement that we were working out with Deepwater Wind. We also have a community host agreement with Gateway, which is the terminal operator. That's the company that operates the state pier for the Connecticut Port Authority. And we also have a community host agreement with the Connecticut Port Authority. So all told, we're generating, that operation is generating a good amount of revenue for the taxpayers of the city of New London, which is a good thing. Also, dealing with the inequity of the property tax exemptions that the state has, the legislature, led by our local delegation, increased that pilot payment that's made by the state for that property. So we're also receiving a pilot payment from the state.
Is there any movement on the property where the high-rises were taken down? Weren't you hopeful that somebody was going to take that over and develop it? What's going on with that?
We actually have not started marketing it yet. I believe we'll be putting out an RFP for that property in the next few months. It has been generating revenue for the city, though. The last year or so, we leased it to Kiewit, which is the general contractor for the state pier construction. So if you've been by there, you'll notice that there's been a good deal of construction equipment and laydown area for the state pier reconstruction project. We've been leasing that to Kiewit, and they're just giving the property back to us at the end of this month. So,
I skipped ahead too fast. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention with regard to the reval and reassessment?
Yeah, I think nothing's in the scope of human endeavors. Nothing's ever perfect. So there can be errors, and property owners have the ability to appeal the assessment that they've received. A lot of it is based on self-reporting, because the process started with property owners getting an appraisal of their property from the assessor, and they were able to disclose whether anything had changed in their building. So vision appraisal uses the self-reporting of the property owners as a basis for arriving at their figure, and then they add market analysis and real estate market conditions and all sorts of other factors in order to come up with the current assessment for the property. But if any particular property owner feels like their assessment is not fair, then there's a process to appeal that.
Mike, one question I've always wanted to ask, and I never have been able to do it, but maybe you have the answer. I mean, with COVID and all the economic conditions that have affected us in the last few years, how does the city pay its light bill? Is each building metered? I mean, that's got to be an enormous expense for the city.
It is. It's a big expense, but we've done a lot of work recently to lower that cost dramatically because of new technology. So all of our buildings have been, for instance, switched over to LEDs, and most of them, the lights go on and off automatically. Public Works does stay on top of the latest technology and different ways to lower our energy consumption costs. We also contract for the best price for the electricity. We enter into long-term contracts. So and we're also doing things like engaging in the what they call the solar power, and there's some sort of a net metering type process where we can go to the market and we can actually participate in selling solar energy. And right now we're working on a project where we're going to the landfill at Bates Woods, which essentially because of that it's a landfill, it has essentially no value. There's nothing that can really be developed on that property. You can't even really use it for. Over the decades, there's been different proposals, sports fields and different type of things. But it's, environmentally, it's still the garbage is all still there. Decades and decades of rotting garbage. So it's just not usable from an environmental standard. But one thing that landfills can be used for is solar farms. So right now we're engaging in a contract to develop that old landfill, the top of that old landfill, as a solar farm.
That's a tremendous idea. Have you ever seen the one on Oil Mill Road in Waterford?
No, I don't think I've been by
It's
that
an
one.
unbelievable piece of property. I think they took, I want to say 50 acres, and they're solar panels from one side of the property to the other. You can't see to the other side of the property.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very impressive.
Is that is that private property or is that a government?
No, a solar company bought the property from a private owner.
Okay.
And there's a lot of discussion about it because of the tax value of it. If they were to put houses up there or charge them taxes on what's there, and I guess it turned out that it was pretty an even number, and they got approved. But it's amazing. I got a couple questions from someone, if you don't mind answering. Protocol for bringing properties or new development into downtown. Is there a policy for that? And if so, how does that work? Who would they call?
So that's probably the biggest and greatest priority of this administration, and has been since day one. The development or the redevelopment of our buildings, our historic buildings in the downtown district, right? If you remember, I was no sooner elected than I was accused of being the empty building mayor. Remember that? The problem with...
I have no retention, and you've got to question me on what I remember.
Yeah. Well, I remember that because it stung. I mean, the storefronts downtown have been vacant my whole life, okay? But one of the accomplishments that I'd like to leave would be to have those storefronts reactivated, the buildings redone. The problem with the empty storefronts that you see is, they're in buildings that are owned by someone who's not interested in leasing the space, or the building is not in any kind of a condition for the storefront to be leased. So if you talk about protocols, what we have to do is we have to work and we do this, I do this with the Department of Economic Development. You know, we work with either the current owner or work with the current owner to transfer ownership of the building and get the building into the hands of somebody that has the capital to renovate it and then lease it out. And we've had some really remarkable successes. The Manwaring building is one. That building had been vacant, was old office space, first floor was vacant. It's now dorm rooms for Con College kids, so we also have the economic benefit of the Con College kids downtown. The old Morgan and White building is apartments, and the storefronts are completely leased on the first floor. The new development, which is called Riverbank, which is 3 buildings on Bank Street, just to the west of the Buckley House. Those 3 buildings are close to being done. In fact, the apartments upstairs are leasing up now. Those apartments are done, but the storefronts are still under construction. One of them is going to be the relocated Tox Brewery from Broad Street. People are excited about that. The Royal Hotel, which is one of the buildings across from where Muddy Waters is, next to the Liberty Bank, the old Liberty Bank, those upper stories have been renovated into luxury apartments, and there's a new restaurant that's fitting out the space on the first floor, which will be moving in there. So as we get, I mean, I keep going, but as we get these buildings renovated, we're not having a problem leasing up the first floors. Right now, we're in a situation where we have more investors interested in buying these blighted vacant buildings than we have building owners willing to sell for whatever reason. So solving that problem is, if you want to look at it as a protocol, that's been the mission of our economic development department. We have more small businesses that want to open up that are looking for storefronts in the downtown area than we have storefronts that can accommodate a small business because of the condition of the building or the unwillingness of the owner of the building to lease it out. So it's a complex situation that we're continually working on, but we're very, very optimistic because, as you know, almost a month doesn't go by that we don't have breakthroughs, being able to transfer ownership. The sale of Citizens Bank, which has been, you know, something we've been working on for years, finally took place.
Citizens Bank in the day?
And the Day building.
That's Dash Davidson and that crew. Do you expect to see some action down there soon? What are they doing with that?
Well,
that's quite a project.
Yeah. This particular High Tide Capital is the name of the development company. They're impressive. They've done some impressive work. They're responsible for the Manwaring building, and they're responsible for the Riverbank project on Bank Street. Both this development group purchased the real estate and gets right to work. They're going from one project to the next. So we're very optimistic that this project will be underway within this next year. Within 2024, we'll be able to see that project.
When do you expect development of Fort Trumbull to begin? Is somebody going to build a hotel down there?
The developer that did, no. I don't believe the hotel project is viable anymore, and that project is for sale, is being marketed right now by the developer that owns that site plan.
So he controls the project, and he's trying to
Correct.
Sell it to someone else.
Yes.
Got it.
But the developer of the Beam on Howard Street has a development agreement, or is close to inking a development agreement, to put 600 units of housing on that peninsula.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, excuse me.
And that's close?
Yes, that's moving forward, and that was one of the reasons that development on that peninsula has stalled out for 20 years, is essentially the flood management certificate, it's called. DEP and FEMA had limited the development of housing on the peninsula to 110 units. It initially was less than that. If you remember the Stillman project, which never got out of the ground, we had FEMA increase the flood management certificates to 110 units to accommodate that project. That project never happened, but we've been stuck with that limited number of housing units. And the market and these developers need more scale, more units to make a project profitable. So it's taken us a couple of years to negotiate with DEP in order to get that cap lifted. Excuse me.
You like water?
No, I'll make it.
You done with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Couple other questions, because we're running out of time. There's concern with the blight of New London. Do you see that in your travels? I don't really see it, to be honest with you, but some people seem to think that blight is a problem. Is that an ongoing?
You know, there's always going to be blight. It's one of those problems that has to be managed constantly. You have to stay on top of it. I think we've made good progress just by the fact that we have a dedicated position just to manage that problem, our blight officer. He does a great job, but we have to constantly be on top of it. I'm probably the person I text pictures to the most on a daily basis is the blight officer. As I'm going around town, I spot something, I'll take a picture, and he'll get right on top of it.
So you feel that it's being addressed?
We try to stay on top of it, and you know, government can't do everything. So we do need help from the residents on some problems like that. So we at least need things to be reported to us, and we do endeavor to take care of them.
Big topic always in the news is affordable housing, no matter what city or town you live in. What's the current status of whatever affording housing is?
So it's a hot button issue, and different people have different opinions. We're executing a strategy where we believe that the housing crisis is a supply and demand issue, and we're increasing the supply of housing in New London. Probably, and the governor has recognized us as being a success story as far as being able to attract investment and get housing built, get these units built. We've been doing a good job of that. For every market rate housing unit that opens up, it takes pressure off of the rest of the existing market. So it helps to maintain the increased rents that people are feeling.
What is affordable housing, though?
Affordable housing, that merely means that your housing is considered affordable to you if you're not spending more than 30% of your income to pay for your housing costs, which is the whole soup to nuts. You know, your taxes, your mortgage, or your rent, your utilities, everything. You should only have to dedicate 30% of your income to cover your housing costs. Now, in reality, we have many people that are paying much more than that to cover their housing costs. But the goal is the 30% threshold. So it's really relative, okay? If you just got recruited to EB, and EB is certainly driving our housing development right now in Southeastern Connecticut and in New London. If you got recruited to EB for a six-figure salary job, certainly those beautiful new apartments at the Beam are affordable for you. And the goal is for that individual to have that type of inventory available so that the person is going to have to live somewhere. He doesn't take up a unit that somebody else could afford with a lower salary.
So the Beam seems to be running up pretty good. Seems to be filling up. Bank Street seemed to have filled up in a couple of months. I don't understand how they afford it, but
well, they have salaries that
yeah, well, that's, yeah.
that can well afford it.
A lot of people don't have those salaries, though.
That's correct, but you have to provide an inventory of housing for all income levels in order to have a healthy housing market. Now, one of the issues in New London was we really hadn't built any brand new, what you call luxury market rate apartments in decades. We didn't even have that type of
When you say
inventory.
we, that's
city.
not government's responsibility, that's the developer's responsibility, isn't it?
Well, you know, the developer is only going to work in a municipality where that municipality is working with the developer in order to get the project done. And, you know, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden, you know, over the last 8 years, these, you know, these expanses of land that have been vacant for 40 and 50 years are finally filling up. I mean, we've clearly sent a message to investors and developers that we're open for business and it's time for this city to be developed.
Things are booming in New London, Mike. We're just about out of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we close out?
I don't panic over the revaluation of your assessment. We will be trying very, very hard when we put the budget together to ensure that taxes do not increase for the people of the city of New London. That's our commitment.
Now, can we put you on the spot here while we're closing out to ensure us that our taxes are going to be stabilized and will not increase?
That's the commitment. That's the commitment I've made, and we're going to try very hard.
All right. You heard it here first. Mayor Mike Passero,
All right.
the luckiest mayor in the state of Connecticut. Every mayor wants to be like Mayor Passero. He's got money coming in from all over and development coming in from all over. Mike Passero. So, Mike, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for watching. Happy New Year to everybody. Marley I signing off from the city. Too tough to die, New London.